This is Pod Populi, podcasts for the people.
Welcome back to the Wedding Buzz. It's your host, Sydney, and today I want to talk about your floral consultations and how you can be best prepared before you are chatting with florists. Meeting with your florist for your wedding is very, very exciting, and they, add a lot of, what ends up being the overall look and feel of your wedding. So it's really important that you are getting what you want, and some people, flowers are flowers, but some people really, have a certain style that they like or a vision. And I want to make sure that your vision comes to life. And part of that is being really prepared for this floral consultation to make sure that it goes as smooth as possible. If you are prepared, you're going to get a better and accurate quote, because I don't want you to get, just a general quote, but then it's not really what you need. So little by little, it ends up going more and more. I also want to make sure that your vision is actually met. I don't want you to just have a rough conversation. They're thinking one thing, you're thinking something else. And then on your wedding day, the flowers aren't what you were expecting. And sometimes they are trying their best and it's just a miscommunication. So I want to make sure that your consultations are really smooth so that there's clear communication. It prevents any last minute stress or unexpected costs. And I want you to be able to stay in your budget. That is key. I meet with a lot of brides who are like, I don't have a budget. I'm like, but you do. Because when this florist comes back and tells you that your flowers are going to cost $20,000, are you okay with that? If no, then you have a budget. You have some sort of budget. So what to bring to your floral consultation? And a lot of these are done via Zoom, so it's not like physically bringing it, but what can you have prepared? One, inspirational photos. Most people know this, but I would create a Pinterest board. All of us probably have Pinterest boards. Some of them haven't been updated since about middle school. So make sure that you are updating your Pinterest board. Make it really clean and concise. You don't have to have a million pictures. Sometimes too many pictures is more complicated because it's like, which picture are we going off of? And florists don't like to necessarily copy Pinterest, but it is a very good tool to make sure that we're on the same page, because sometimes I've had brides be like, I want purple flowers. And then once we end up looking at pictures, we realize that my version of purple is different than your version of purple, which is fine, but pictures really, really help. So that, not that we're necessarily going to copy the Pinterest board and copy what another florist or artist has done, but at least we can say, okay, this part of it we love from this picture and this part from this picture, and we can kind of create something, customized for you and your wedding. So I would bring definitely inspirational photos. That can be a Pinterest board, very easy. If you have Instagram, make sure that you're, if you're finding things on Instagram you like, make sure that you're saving it in a concise way, maybe a Google folder or a Dropbox folder or some easy way that you all can access the same photos. And talk about these things. And then if you're old school, maybe some magazine clippings. You can do some cutout like I think they used to do. But the next thing I want you to bring is your color palette. Make sure that it doesn't have to be, exact and finalized, and you have time to make some changes, but make sure that you have figured out kind of what colors you want to go for. Sometimes I find that brides will go to these floral meetings and just kind of be like, well, I don't know. What do you think? And me and the florists are always like, it has to be what you think. I mean, we had a bride recently who was like, well, I just don't want it to be ugly. And I was like, okay, wait. Our job is to make sure it's not ugly, for sure, and to make sure that we take your vision and bring it to life in a way that's going to really work out. But if we're talking about pink flowers versus blue flowers, that is totally just your preference. We can guide you as far as it's a spring wedding, maybe we think this, or it's a fall wedding, maybe we think this, or the venue's at the beach and we think this would go really well. But at the end of the day, it's your wedding. And so you need to kind of come to us and tell us, hey, I love these colors and I love these photos. And then we can kind of create something custom from there. And then the overall aesthetic. Think about it. Do you like something really modern? Do you like rustic? Do you like romantic? Do you like boho? Again, my job as a planner is to make sure that like your vision is being heard and that your vision is coming to life. And then the florist is, the one actually doing the florals. And so we will take your vision and we can always give you ideas and suggestions. But at the end of the day, we need to know what style you really love. It doesn't matter what style we like. It matters what style you like. So I would spend a little time thinking about that before you go into a meeting, so that, we can hit the ground running and make sure that you really are going to get what you want. So another thing to bring or to have prepared is your venue. I would definitely book your venue before you have the floral meeting because your florist needs to know the venue space and what that venue is going to require. Some venues have different, well, first of all, style. If it's a beach venue, if it's a barn venue, sometimes the florals will want to kind of match that aesthetic. Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? Does it have high ceilings? Does it have low ceilings? Is there a stair railing? We need to know the venue so that we can really prepare and like customize your floral quote for the venue. I say we, it's the florist doing this, but I'm a part of it. Helping make sure that the brides are getting what they want, and it's a collaborative process. And then make sure that you know where your ceremony and your reception is going to be at the venue. And if you have any like pictures or floor plans of the venue, sometimes I try to help with this as well. But if you have a good video of the space, that's really helpful to bring to your floral consultation as well. And I keep saying, I help with this, but I might not be in your call. I might not be there. If you have a planner, hopefully they help. If you don't have a planner, then you definitely are going to be the one that needs to be prepared. And then the other thing that has to do with the venue is rules and restrictions. Some venues have policies about real petals versus fake petals versus candles, like live flame candles versus LEDs, or what you're allowed to install. Can you do a ceiling installation? Can you add a garland to the stair railing? These are all things that each venue is going to be different on. And I would chat with your venue about these rules and restrictions prior to your meeting with your florist. So the next thing that I want you to have prepared is your guest count and key floral needs. So how many guests is going to affect how many tables you have. And so it's good to know a rough guest count. Obviously, these things change, and your florist is not going to order your flowers until, about 30 days prior. So you have some time to make some changes. But how many, obviously, one bridal bouquet or maybe two. How many bridal bouquets do you want? How many bridesmaids do you have that want bouquets? How many boutonnieres do you want? Do you want them for the father of the bride and groom? Do you want corsages for the moms or the grandmas? Think about these things and make sure that you add it to your floral count. They are smaller details that are not going to drive up the budget a ridiculous amount, but they still do cost. And if you forget them, there's another couple $100 in the end that you weren't planning on spending that now you have to add in there. And I will say your florist should go through all these items and ask you about them, but it's nice to be prepared so that you have answers. So the next thing I want you to think about is your ceremony decor. Think about your aisle. Do you want things in the back of the aisle? Do you want things down the aisle? Do you want things at the front? Do you want an arch? What do you want at the altar? Do you want like some podiums or pedestals? There are lots of different things you can do like down the aisle. Do you want a runner? Do you want petals on the aisle? Do you want floral arrangements down the aisle? Do you want ribbons down the aisle? Lots of things that you can do. So think about what do you want in the back of the aisle, down the aisle, and then the front of the aisle for your ceremony. Also, your ceremony, often there's like welcome signs or a memory table or something as people are entering. So do you want floral arrangements for these tables? I can tell you that a big table with a little guest book and that's it on the table can look pretty empty. So you might want a floral arrangement or at least other things to fill up that space. And then reception decor is obviously a big one. Do you want centerpieces? Do you want them low? Do you want them high? Do you think you want a mix of low and high? You also, I keep saying to have these things prepared. It is fair to not have your final answer, but think about it before and maybe make a list of questions. So maybe ask to see the difference between low arrangements and high arrangements and, what the florist thinks the benefits are. of one versus the other. I personally, if you have a big ballroom, I like a mix of high and lows because I think that if it's all low, it can look a little simple. If it's all high, it kind of looks like the flowers are all just kind of floating. So I love a mix of highs and lows to kind of fill up the space and add some contrast throughout the room. The other thing I hear all the time is that they don't want a big arrangement that blocks where you can't talk through. And I understand this, but what I want to, remind you is that a tall centerpiece might have a center vase that would a little bit block, but then the big arrangement is taller than the people sitting there. When it really gets blocked, I feel like is often if you have like a low arrangement that's too big. So I love like tall arrangements with something kind of smaller on the bottom. But just some food for thought of if you have, low arrangements that get too big, that's going to kind of block people's view. But if you have tall arrangements, if they're taller than people, then it won't block their view at all. I mean, there's going to be the vase in the center, but that's usually not too big. Half the time it's like clear glass or like a stand or something that's very thin. So don't rule out tall centerpieces just because you don't want people to have to talk kind of around your arrangement. There are ways to do grand centerpieces without totally blocking everyone's view. As far as reception, there's obviously centerpieces. A sweetheart table. Do you want a sweetheart table or a head table? Also for the centerpieces, are you doing round tables versus rectangles? So are they going to be more of like a, is it a circle, a round table where the centerpiece will be kind of in a circle shape? Or is it going to be a rectangle table where it's going to be more like a runner, like a long, skinny runner that goes through the center of the tables? Same with sweetheart table versus head table. A lot of the time for the sweetheart table or even the head table, wherever the bride and groom are, they will put arrangements on the table and then also on the floor in front of the table. It can look really pretty. People do flowers for their cake. I don't know if you've ordered your cake yet or not, but often often we have the florist bring extra flowers for the cake so that it matches. So it's the same flowers that they're using everywhere else. And then if you want anything for the bar, sometimes it's pretty on the bar to have an arrangement. Obviously that's extra, but depends how elaborate you want to get. Some other extras are flower girl petals, floral crowns, like little headbands and stuff for the flower girl. Do you want a separate little bouquet to toss? If you're tossing the bouquet at the reception, often brides don't want to ruin their own bouquet. Sometimes you can just throw one of the bridesmaids' bouquets because usually those just get thrown away anyway. But you don't want to throw your actual wedding bouquet because it'll probably get ruined in that process. And then if you're doing like a getaway car, do you want any floral arrangements on that car? Or if there's anything else that you're doing that day, if you have, something special, if you have like a live painter, if you're doing a memory table, I think I mentioned that earlier, any extra little thing, do you want floral arrangements for that part of your wedding? Okay, so the next part that I want you to be prepared going into your consultation, which is not the fun part, but budget and priorities. You have to know a budget range and a realistic range. I see couples all the time saying, we don't really have a budget, let's just see. But when I tell you that floral quotes can easily over $10,000 into $20,000 and beyond, it's really easy to go through and be like, oh, I'd love this, I'd love that, I love this. And then you get a quote back for, $20,000, $30,000 and people are shocked. It does not have to be that much money. I mean, flowers are not cheap. You can definitely stay, depending on how many guests and how elaborate you want it, 5,000, 10,000, which is still a lot of money, but you need to think about this and see how much you're willing to spend. If you don't know, if you don't have to have an exact number, but at least a range, at least like a max, so that they know what to quote you as well, because you don't want them to take the time to create this elaborate design that's going to be stunning, but then it's 4 times the amount of money that you could ever spend. So I would really sit down and talk about a budget range, at least that you want to be in. And then decide what's a must-have and then a nice-to-have. So a must-have is probably like a bridal bouquet, or a must-have is some sort of centerpiece. And then a nice-to-have might be the elaborate centerpiece or extra flowers for the guest book table. That might be nice to have, but it's not necessarily a requirement. And I would just be honest about the cost, be honest about what your budget is so that your florist can make suggestions to fit your budget. Because what's the point of having conversations that you definitely can't afford? You might want to ask them about seasonal flowers and preferences if you're doing like a spring wedding or a fall wedding, or you can ask them because, they do this over and over again. Like, you can ask them, do they have any favorites? Do they have any like substitutes? Or if they have just some advice. I would also come prepared with a list of flowers that you love. Do you like roses? Do you like hydrangeas? Maybe spend a little time to do a little research on different types of flowers. Again, they're the professionals. You can just show them some pictures and they should know, what to do from there. But, maybe do a little research and figure out, okay, what kind of flowers are popular in the spring or the summer or the fall? And is what I'm asking for realistic? And then think about allergies. I don't know if you have big allergies, but, maybe just think about if there's a certain type of flower that you're allergic to or something to make sure that you avoid that. And then something that I want you to think about and make sure that you ask in this consultation, like you won't have this beforehand, but make sure to ask, who handles what? Does your florist deliver and set up, or do you need to pick up the flowers? I would highly recommend just finding a florist that does the delivery, because then you're going to be paying for the flowers and you're going to be paying a separate company for the delivery. And then what if, the whoever's delivering and setting up doesn't know where the arrangements go? That can get very messy. I would definitely suggest that you find a florist that just does weddings. They do the setup, they do the cleanup, they do everything. So make sure to ask that and make sure that the answer is yes, we will cover it. Ask about timeline for delivery, like when will the bouquets be ready? Remember that just because your ceremony might be at 4:00 and then your reception's at like 5:30, you might want your bouquet for photos earlier at like 2:00. So see what time will they be delivering? What time will the bouquets be ready? And ask them what time they need access to the venue. I would also ask the venue what time they are allowed access, because the florist might say, hey, we need access at 9 a.m. If the venue lets you in 2 hours prior, then the venue lets you in 2 hours prior, and they need to make sure that they have enough staff to get the job done in just those last 2 hours. And then this is key. I deal with this all the time. Will they break down and clean up? The florist should come back and break down their arrangements, collect their vases, and clean up. Because guess what? The venue is not going to be happy if you leave it. You probably don't want to get stuck doing all that. Your mom doesn't want to get stuck doing that. And someone needs to be in charge of breaking down and cleaning up. So make sure that the florist has it in their proposal. They might charge a breakdown fee, which is fair. They have to come back late at night. They have to clean up. It's a lot of work. Fair, but make sure that you are adding that in your package, because someone has to clean it up. I have had brides before be like, it's okay, we'll just leave it. And I'm like, oh no, the venue is not going to be happy if you just leave it. And they probably will hit you with a fine if you just leave it. So the fine is probably more than whatever it's going to cost for the florist to come down and break it down. So make sure that you are asking about breakdown and cleanup. A few other questions to maybe talk to your florist about is, weather. Is your wedding indoors or outdoors? Do they have any suggestions on what flowers would hold up better for your venue or the weather? Repurpose. Sometimes you can repurpose your flowers. I will say, remember that if you're repurposing, that means they have to come back during your cocktail hour and move your flowers. That requires labor, that's time, and often they have a team and they have to pay this team for this time. So there's probably going to be a repurpose fee, but I will say that it's usually worth it. I mean, I've had brides spend $1,500 on an altar or like on an arch for the altar. And then, they want us to charge $100 or $150 for moving. And of course, the bride didn't want to pay that. But I'm like, look, you already paid $1,500 for the arch. You might as well just spend $150 more so that you can utilize it for your ceremony and your reception. And it's always beautiful. We put it often behind the sweetheart table or behind the head table, wherever the bride and groom are sitting. And it's really nice. I would ask them how far in advance they are ordering the flowers to make sure that you know when your final counts and, decisions have to be made. If you want pink flowers versus blue flowers or any final decisions, when is your last chance to change your mind or add people or take away people? If they have backup options, if a flower is unavailable, what would they do? And then if they have any cost saving alternatives or ideas of way to, work within your budget or repurpose. And then I would ask them what happens if anything arrives damaged or wilted, and like, are they there the day of? How long do they stay? Make sure that they're not just like dropping off and, bye, peacing out of there. Make sure that not that they have to stay the whole time, but make sure that, they're going to be around to set up, that you can see your bouquet and that you're happy. Unfortunately, you probably won't see your reception until later. That's, part of having a planner, is that your planner makes sure that your reception is all set up correctly. And if there's any issues, that they can contact your florist. But just ask them how the day goes and, how long are they around? How do they operate on the wedding day? So I hope that this all helped. I know I just threw a lot of information at you, but I overall just suggest to kind of be prepared for your floral meeting. Have pictures prepared, know your colors, know your style. Don't feel like you have to have everything perfect. I have some brides kind of be like, sorry, I don't know. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to have it perfect, but just have an idea, a starting point, Do a little bit of homework before you go into your floral consultation. It'll save you time, and it'll make sure that you're getting a quote for exactly what you really want. Well, with that said, I hope that was helpful. Good luck. Don't be afraid to ask all the questions. There are no stupid questions. This is a big part of your wedding day, and it's a lot of money. The florals are definitely a big chunk of money on your wedding day. So don't be afraid to ask questions, do your homework, be prepared, and I wish you guys the best of luck for your wedding, but specifically for your floral consultations.